Today, we're going to talk about full zirconia workflow with Harvest EasyGum. So, Harvest EasyGum, Harvest Nano Zirconia coming together, full prosthetic workflow, start to finish. We've had a lot of questions about this, so we're going to dive deep today, cover every step together. Shauna, what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about the process or my process that I use for applying EasyGum to zirconia, but I'm going to actually go through green state, show you what it looks like coming straight out of the centering oven for me, and then I will share some finals with you. This is what we're going to get to. This is a final. This arch has never seen a ceramic oven. This is all EasyGum, and this has all been hand polished. And I'm going to show today what my process looks like because it's very different than the quicker workflow that we use for provisionals. I take my time when placing because I want to keep a lower profile and I want to put a little bit more detail into this work. So today I'll show my green state. So I do my polishing to achieve that super shine in the green state across the teeth. And then when it comes out of the centering oven, we'll have this super high shine on the teeth that actually look like they're glazed. And then we'll kind of talk about and go through that process.
Hold on, go back. So, there's no glaze on those teeth out of the sintering oven right there?
No glaze whatsoever.
Wow.
So
Okay.
this is it. It came out of the centering oven looking just like this.
Promise?
I promise.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Super,
All
super
right.
cool. We're going to start with green state polishing, yes?
Yes, so I have already done my contouring and, my little bit of detail work, which, everyone has their own tools that they prefer to use. I would suggest doing all of that before you go into your final polishing. So I'm really going to focus today on just what that final polishing looks like to get it into the centering oven to achieve that shine. And I use three tools really to get the shine going. So these two spirals are two of my favorite. They're like rubber polishers, silicone polishers. I'll
Diamond
use
infused silicone.
diamond infused, yes. So I'll use the pink one will help smooth things out. So it's a little bit more abrasive than the tan one. So I'll use the pink one lightly and I'll go over that. And then I'll use the tan one for really getting that high shine to kind of pop through. And then I'll finish up with a cotton fluffy.
And it's the pink was a medium grit and the tan
hmm
is a fine grit. And then good old Mr. Fluffy.
So I will start. Let me get back in the. So I'm not going to put too much pressure. And a lot of people ask me, well, what is your speed? And I always say that varies from person to person. I I have a very heavy hand. Um, so I'm going about a medium speed and I'm kind of going in an upward, downward motion. Because if I really lean into this, I can really start taking away too much of that surface. So this is really just for smoothing.
Any things to avoid when you're in this first step? Like any um, hand postures that could get you in trouble?
No, I
Techniques
think
that.
it's kind of varies from person to person as far as how your hand position is. Definitely want to make sure that you're stabilized and you're doing it's kind of like a light touch and a roll across the anatomy. If you're going to dig into it or in approximately, you're going to take away too much of the. And if you have a couple practice pieces, to get started on, nano zirconia is the texture is a lot tougher. So if you're using this on a different zirconia, you may not get the same results. Um,
Hmm.
so zirconia polishing in green state's not new. I've done this in the past, but with nano, I kind of brought it back into play because of the texture of nano. I was able to get a higher shine than usual, so it started to become really fun. So I'm going to switch over to the tan, and we're going to start seeing that shine really start to pop. And I'll go with a little bit of a higher speed and pressure. Same
Uh,
upward, downward
Come
motion.
on center. There you go. And for the sake of this video, I don't think you need to do the entire arch, maybe the front six, or just to show the process and the results that they should be seeing on those teeth before they put it in the sintering oven.
Okay. So you should be applying enough pressure to it so you start seeing that surface start
Hmm.
to really smooth
Wow.
out and shine.
So it should be pretty shiny here in this second step.
Yep. There you go.
I'm
There.
gonna have to upload some background music here, to have a little beat going.
Right?
Awesome.
All right,
So yeah,
now,
what are you looking for here to know that you're ready for cotton fluffy?
well, I'm seeing a really, really pretty shine all the way across the teeth. And I know that this next step, using the cotton fluffy, just takes it to the next level. So I'll do the same motions back and forth, up and down, and kind of like rolling over these line angles. I'm using a higher speed, a little bit more pressure, and you're starting to kind of see that. There we go. So one thing I didn't really talk about at the very beginning, and I do get a lot of questions about, is do I have to do a cutback? And my suggestion is yes, you should. The resin is a little bit thicker than when the ceramic is, put through the oven. So I do give myself a little bit of space so I can keep a lower profile on the surface so it's not super bulky looking. And you can do this by hand or you can do this in design. That's totally up to you. I like to do it by hand and I use this. It's a double crosshatch and it has this like blunt end. And I really like to define where my finishing line is so I can tuck the resin in nice and neat because I like that really smooth transition that you'll see here.
Hmm.
So we don't want the resin to be a little too bulky. We don't want it to have any gaps or voids. So I really like to make my finishing line very distinct. And this is a little bit of an example of what my cutbacks look like. I've taken like a little printed piece, but I will roll the end of this burr right up underneath and kind of blend that downwards towards the papilla all the way across, just like that. And I'll continue just a little bit more with the cotton, but we're getting a super high shine on this. If you're not getting a shine on it, there's a couple of things that are going on. It's not smooth enough. You could possibly not see the same results in other zirconias. The silicone polishers are really, really important because they smooth the surface, and a smooth surface is what's gonna shine. And I do get some questions about, well, what if I want to characterize with uh, green state liquids? And absolutely, you can. You're going to do that before you go into this polishing phase. And when you do that, you're going to have to make sure that your liquids are completely dry before you polish. And
And the green state liquids, you'll apply them, they'll absorb into the zirconia so that when you polish it,
yeah,
you're not going to be really removing that, just smoothing out the surface on top of those infiltrated stains.
there we go. So this is pretty much where I would stop for that polishing.
So to do a full arch, maybe 10 minutes,
Yeah,
15
I would say
minutes?
so. I'd give myself about 10 minutes to, to really make sure that I'm getting all the way around. This is a really big arch, but I've pretty much gone from like premolar to premolar on here. Um, this I'll put into the centering oven. You can speed center if you haven't added colored liquids. Color liquids, you're going to want to go a full cycle, just because of the way that they need to process. The arch that I have done today, there's like cooking show here. This was actually speed center, and I was still
Wow.
able to get this really pretty shine. The color looks great. I was really happy with this. So this just came out of the oven. Now I could, focus on the teeth and buff it a little bit, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do that at the very end. What I'm really going to focus on is the prep work that it's going to take for this EasyGum to stick to it. And we're going to take this over to the sandblaster. And we're going to use aluminum oxide, um, preferably 50 or 100 micron, if you have that. And we're going to really focus in on making sure that we get up a little bit over this finishing line. And we're going to have to use a precision tip, making sure that we get down and around this papilla in these areas.
So can we just use glass beads if we don't have aluminum oxide?
No, glass beads are just going to polish the surface. They're not going to actually break the surface, so we can allow the bond to kind of sink into the zirconia.
But what if I
And
feel like I just want to use glass beads?
but you can't. You can't.
But
No,
so
absolutely 100%. It has to be aluminum oxide. That's what's really going to break the surface for this to work. If you do by chance use a glass beads and you don't know it, I will describe exactly what it feels like when we go into the bonding phase. The bond will not cure properly if we don't do this step correctly. So that's the
so
first
aluminum
step.
oxide, 50 to
Mhm.
100 microns is required for this
Yes,
sandblasting step.
absolutely. And
Awesome.
once we get it sandblasted, we're gonna go over steam clean, air dry, and then come back to the bench, and we are ready to do our bonding process. So we are going to use the Harvest all-in-one bond. This is also a very important step. We get some questions about, well, can I use, a different bond? No, you can't. You're going to have to use this one. This bond was designed with the strength and the extra additives to be compatible with zirconia and metal.
Yeah, this Harvest EasyGum Bond agent is an all-in-one, self-etching, specially formulated bond. Similar formulations as in-mouth clinical bonds for like composite fillings. And so, yes, the Harvest EasyGum Bond is required for this workflow to get the bond strength that you need. We have 21 to 22 megapascals of bond strength, very, very strong bond. The prepping, though, is super important. The sandblasting, steam cleaning, a clean, dry, sandblasted surface. Shaana, maybe talk too really quick about the importance of a precision tip in
Yeah.
sandblasting into those papilla areas just so that you do get that bond strength in the papilla areas.
And most of the machines that we have on the market do have extra tips that we can actually do a little bit more detail with a smaller amount so you can get into these tighter places. if you can't, there are some options where you can just use a piece of painter's tape and then just kind of cut out. It takes a lot, but I would research whatever machine you have and whatever precision tips that they have available for you to use to get into those hard to reach and kind of fine areas with that.
And this is a critical step because the interpapilla area is going to be a thin piece of EasyGum, and it's important that that bond surface there at the papillas is really strong. Because
Yes.
if there were going to be delamination, that would be where it would occur if you leave air pockets in there. You don't get a really good bond in that area. So precision tip sandblasting is critical in those papilla areas, and then getting the bond in there, getting it light cured properly.
I mean, this is a really good example as why, because I've had some individuals having some issues. Well, it feels like it's lifting. Generally, that's why, but I'm also going to go over some techniques to make sure that your papilla is nice and tight and tucked in and not lifting up where you can get snagged or get things and moisture underneath of it. So that's going to be a really important step when you're doing this process with zirconia. All right, so we got bond. I have one drop generally gets me the whole arch. And I'm going to just put this out here that I'm just going to be using a disposable paintbrush. It's a 000 paintbrush. I get a pack of them off of Amazon. I like using these for a reason. I feel like these little micro brushes, they're great. I love them for certain things, but for this, I feel like with the bond, it's just picking it up and putting it down and picking up and put. I'm not able to really get it to spread out and get down into these areas the way that I like to. So I will be using this brush. Not put as much as I thought. There we go. And I'm going to start from one end and work my way around to the other end. I like the brush because I can paint it and stretch it, and I have full control of where it's going. Really make sure that you're getting down into this papilla area. And I pretty much go over that gingival margin ever so slightly. We don't want to see any pulling on the surface. A little bit goes a long way. We just need to make sure that all of the surface is covered. Now, when we go into curing, we are going to be using a handheld curing light. And when I say handheld, this is lights that we typically see clinical doctors are using for curing in the mouth. And the reason why we have to use these lights is because they have a higher intensity and nanometer.
Yeah, it's important to know that for curing the bond, you need a higher nanometer wavelength found and commonly found in handheld dental curing lights, like clinical curing lights. So Shauna uses a light called the woodpecker, which we'll show here in a minute. But most cure boxes don't cure at this, higher nanometer wavelength. You can find that in the. We'll put a link in the YouTube description for the EasyGum IFU that has the nanometer wavelength required for the handheld light, which is what you need for the bond. And then for the strips and the modifiers and all that, you can then move your workflow to a curing box.
So I'm just really making sure now that I'm all the way to the end, I'm going to work my way back and making sure that I am stretching this out and that nothing is pulling up around the papilla. I'll pull it up. If it is applied too thick, it will struggle to cure. I'm really just really concentrating on making sure that, these areas around the teeth are fully covered. Perfect. Now I will do a light puff of air before we go into curing. This just thins the surface. And with my curing light, it has a wider head on it, so I can do about 2 teeth per section. And I'm going to hover right as close as I can to it, but without touching. And I'll be curing for 20 seconds per section. And typically with these lights, you'll be doing this in 20 to 30 seconds per section. We don't want to move back and forth across the arch. You want to stay in one spot, cure it, and then you're going to move on to the next spot.
And so the bond will look shiny, but it will be dry and not like slippery or tacky or anything.
It should be the texture of this when we check it is going to be kind of like if we were just to glaze it. It's going to look wet and shiny, but when we touch it, it's solid. It's not sticky. If there's any tackiness whatsoever, it's not curing properly or all the way. I would suggest a couple of things. I would go back over and cure those areas for another 20 to 30 seconds. If that does not cure it, then we need to evaluate the prepping process. It could not have been um, properly sandblasted across the arch in this area, and that'll cause it not to bond or not to cure completely. But I say the first 2 steps are probably the most critical in the entire process. I hear a fly.
It's not me. I don't have any flies in here.
Yes, you did. It's not me.
Actually, I do have a fly right there. Wow.
So as I touch it, there's no tackiness to it whatsoever all the way across. So it just looks super shiny and wet,
Awesome.
nice and solid.
And how long does this process take you for a big arch like this?
I usually give myself, I'll give myself about 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
No, this bonding step.
Oh, the bonding step, shoot, it's a big arch. It probably takes me 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes total. It
Okay.
shouldn't be too long. You just want to make sure that you're really covering the papilla and over the margins. If you're just new to it and starting, I would give yourself a little grace and a more time until you get more efficient with it and comfortable. But it's typically how long it takes me. All right, now for the fun part. So I like these little dishes. I also get these off Amazon. I do not directly apply to the arch. I actually mix my colors and apply with a brush. And I do this for a reason because I want to keep it low profile. So if I were just to squirt it across the arch and then put the strip on, we're going to have a really, really bulky tissue unless we did a pretty significant, cutback, which I don't really want to do. So I do take my time and apply this in a little bit of a different way. So in these little dishes, I use still my favorite colors, which are this one is the dark red plum. Oh, the tip is. And I'll just do a dot. I guess you could find like a super fancy palette. I am going to put a dot of the bright red. And I will do a dot of the violet. This is dark violet. And I like to pick whatever that base shade is really going to be. So if you're getting a base shade of these kind of follow that Lucitone shade guide. And if you're doing like a light pink or a medium pink or the original, I am going to use the original kind of as my base. And put this in the main. And I also like to use the opaque with zirconia. So light travels through zirconia much different than anything milled in PMMA or printed.
We pull out all your 5 syringes here and show them in one shot so we can just see them together of what you got loaded into your tray.
So I have opaque pink. Tossed them about. I have original. So these are my 2 pink modifiers. And then the intense modifiers, I have dark violet, bright red. And the other is the my favorite, the dark red plum. So this is what we have as far as what syringes I'm using for this particular case. Now, not to say that you can't use any of the other colors in place of these.
I'm going to be picky here. Will you rotate them so I can see all the labels at the same time? Yep.
Can you see them?
Yep. Dark red, bright red, dark reddish plum, pink opaque, and original pink. There we go. There's our recipe.
Yeah. All right. I'll put this aside. So from here, I like to use brushes, and there's 2 that I really like using. One of them being if this is a Harvest brush. This is the Nyla. This is the stain. It has a really, really nice tip. I use that often. It's a little bit softer. I did find some brushes. These I found on Amazon. They're actually intended for like model painting. They have a stiffer bristle, which is a little easier to use with um, the flowables because they're so heavy and sticky. So that works out well. So I kind of jump back between the 2 of these. But just like I do with the provisionals, I'm really going to concentrate on creating those shadows that are kind of going to pop through. So these more shallow areas that we see, that's where we're going to put some of our darker colors so we can create that contour look. And I will pick up a little bit of let's slide over. This is the original. And I'll just pull in and mix a little bit of the plum. This part is kind of up to you. Do you have to do exactly as I do? No. These are just kind of tips that I do. You can just go straight in with the plum if you want to. It's kind of just like you would do with your ceramic. Now, if I were to just use the brush and start painting, and I'll show you what that looks, if I just kind of picked it up and started doing this, it's going to get translucent and super thin. It's not going to hold any of the color. So when I place it, it's kind of like you're going to touch and then kind of twist your brush to let it sit. So you're going to pick it up, place it, and it's kind of a twist of the brush. And then from there, you're going to be able to just kind of push and pull it into the positions you want.
So just don't overly thin it out.
Yeah. Now you can dip your brush in a little bit of the bond if it's getting too sticky. And if you get it on the teeth, like I just did, remember that little micro brush? I use that to wipe it off. You can also mix in a little bit of that red as well. So this is a lot like placing liquid ceramics, where you're having to know how the colors work and how they blend together, and you're kind of layering them on top of each other.
How long will you go before you feel the need to cure this and tack it into place?
I get it to where it's it'll kind of like slump on me a little bit, or if I know that I this is a really good stopping point for like that base layer and the colors. You don't have to. You could get the whole underneath of it completed at once and cure it, or you can tack cure in between. Like if you now the flowables are a little heavier, so they will kind of drift on you. So if you're getting really close to the papilla and you don't want it to move around on you, I would just tack cure at that point. That's why I like to start at the finishing line and work my way down to the papilla. I'm gonna go ahead and cure this.
So at this point, you could use a curing box if you wanted,
You could.
right? I guess if you had a curing box at your bench, that'd be beneficial. If you had to get up and go walk to a curing box, it might be more handy to have just a curing light for this part.
The only thing is we want to be careful of you don't want heat in your curing box. So if your curing box produces a lot of heat, you're going to have to go for shorter time spans to make sure that it cures. And I kind of do like a little bit of like a tapping motion to get it off my brush. And if it gets a little too sticky, I'll dip it again in some bond.
And I notice you're not taking these all the way down to the gingival margin. You're leaving a little space. Is that for the EasyGum
Yes.
to go in there?
Yeah, so I kind of work my way down to it. So if I were to paint it there now, it would slump and just continuously go over to, the tooth, and I'd have to spend too much time like pushing it back up. So I will eventually get to a place where I'm very close to it, but I like to ease my way to it. Get it. Yeah. This is pretty much where I'd start to kind of pull this down a little further into the papilla. So this is also one of the things that helps keep it kind of low profiled in this area.
Yeah, that's perfect. We can see that. Oh,
Yeah.
and when you put your brush in there, Goes out of focus. It's trying to focus on your brush.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, that's good.
L love Riverside. Now back out. Yeah.
So, for a trained ceramist that's familiar with liquid porcelain, would you say those skills transfer over to this workflow pretty easily?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I think anyone that's, used to using resins as well, I mean, would have an easy time adapting to this and the way that it layers. Um, it's, it's a little different in texture, of course, because it's, thicker and stickier, in a way, but not too far away from, you know, what some of those liquid ceramics feel like when placing them too. They shouldn't be super watery. They should have some firmness to it as you're placing. If you dilute and get too much bond on your brush, these two will become super flowable and like watery, and they won't actually hold their shape. So the idea is like what we're doing is we're stacking the colors on top of each other, just like we would with a liquid ceramic, and kind of mixing and blending them together to look like natural tissue. Tissue is not just one solid color all the way across. I mean, of course, we can make it that way. Um, but this technique allows you to customize that tissue
And
appearance.
also, these intense shades are going underneath the EasyGum strip that's coming. So
Yeah.
if they're semi perfect as far as like the shade gradient from one portion to the other, it's not critical, right? Because the Easy Gum is gonna sort of, it has translucency to it, and it's gonna mask it
Yeah.
and blend it all together.
Yeah. So I always go a shade lighter. So I use the light shade quite a bit, or I
This
use the,
the strip is a shade lighter than your base layer. You mean?
yep, because it becomes so translucent. I use such, thinner layers. All right. So I'm going to cure this. And just for time purposes, I'm going to stay with these first four and then show you how I place the EasyGum strip on top of this. So I'm going to cure. Again, you're going to need to cure in sections all the way across, or you can put it in a light box at this point. The texture of the flowables will have kind of a tacky layer to them. I don't remove it. I leave it because it will help sandwich the EasyGum to it. but it is a lot different than the other two bonding that we'll be doing, or the curing that we'll be doing. So the bond is not sticky or tacky, and the strips are not sticky or tacky when you cure. The only thing that you will feel that on is the flowables. Okay. All right. Strip. So, I am. I have my strip here. So I kind of just peel back a little bit. I'm not going to take it out of its little plastic. So I'll just peel one end back ever so slightly because I'm not going to use this whole strip. I'm just going to use a piece of it. And I like to use an explorer. You could use a plastic instrument if you want. You could use just about anything that, feels comfortable transferring it over, but I will take small pieces and I like to take little triangle pieces and I will place that.
So it's good to reference here. There's a lot of videos you've done in provisional workflows where you're getting the
Mhm.
pink on quick, slapping the strip on, cutting it away with the papilla tool, quick, easy pink in 15 minutes per arch. But this is a zirconia arch. This is meant to either be a long-term provisional, or some doctors are using this for a final prosthetic. So you're taking your time. You are spending a little more time in your EasyGum workflow. However, your total time from start to finish after sintering is about what you said, 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and that's a significant amount of time. Like that's a little extra, and that's like including my polishing, my prepping. So I get an arch and start on it. I'm looking at about 2.5 hours before I'm completed.
And this arch is never going to touch a ceramic fired oven,
Nope.
which is that's really the workflow advantage. So there's no
Yeah.
ceramic firing. So after sintering, it's coming out. You could have an arch ready to ship out the door in 2 hours.
Yep.
That's
So
awesome.
here I'm patting that out. This is the Ivoclar little paddle tool. I love this thing. So I'll use this and I'm just gently tapping and thinning out that little piece of strip that I put on. And it's covered from here to here already. And this is what's going to give that body and I can put some texture into it. Try to smooth out there. Sometimes I'll come in with my brush, kind of just tap it in to around the papilla area. If your brush is sticking to it a little too much, you can just dip it in a little bit of bond. Don't saturate it, but you just want to be able to like slide across the resin. You can use the back end of the Explorer. And of course, tap a little bit with your finger. I would suggest using gloves when working with zirconia. You don't want to get any of the oils from your fingers on the zirconia, because that could affect some of the bonding. And I will use my little sponge trick. That puts a little bit of texture. You don't have to do that. So when I go to polish, it will look nice and smooth, but it will look a little more like natural tissue because of that texture that I put in it. And I had somebody ask me or say something on a post like, "Well, do they get food stuck in the holes?" There's no holes. It's literally just it's like pressing with a sponge. This is a very soft sponge, so we're just creating a texture across it. We're not actually poking holes or creating divots in the resin. We're just making it look a little bit more like of a matte texture.
And the sponge is optional. Obviously, if someone wants a smooth gingiva
Yeah.
segment, you don't have to do the sponge.
No, not at all. Perfect. I'm going to add just a little bit more. I get it on there and then I just give it a little bit of a press. It'll stick. If your little paddle tool is sticking, also, I just rub it in a little bit of the bond and then I can slide across a little easier when I'm shaping. But, what I'm really concentrating on is making sure that it's nice and thin and even all the way across. I don't want super bulky. Take your time. If you rush when you're placing the resin, and I've seen it 100 times, is it'll start to get sloppy and it's very difficult to go back and having to use a burr to shape it and contour. So if you get it done in this phase, but if you're concentrating on making sure that you get it just the way that you want it to look, then you don't have to worry with it afterwards. Sometimes if we don't concentrate on the papilla, they get a little bit sloppy looking, and then you'll have to go in with the burr. Then you may actually go a little bit too far. You'll have to add again. So I take my time and really, by the time I cure, I'm like, I like it exactly the way it is. I do not have to go back in with any burrs. I don't have to do any adjusting. Ever occasionally, I may, you know, polish a little bit of a, like, if there's like a high edge or something that I just didn't catch, I may smooth that out. But in general, no, I don't ever have to go back with the burr and shape this. But being and taking my time is why I can get something like this that looks like ceramic. And I did not have to take a burr to this at all. And there's no gaps whatsoever around the papilla.
Nice.
Uh-huh. There we go. And I'll hit it with my little sponge one more time. So I bounce back and forth a lot between the Explorer, the paddle, and the brush in this phase. So these are pretty much my main go-to instruments that I'm kind of bouncing in between when placing this. So I'm going to go ahead and tack cure this side just so I don't bump into it. And then I'll move to the other side. I'm just I'm going to do 20 seconds for this whole section. And let's add a little bit more. So, I mean, this is as big as that little piece gets. Place it. I just press, and then I'll use my paddle. The back end of this Explorer is probably one of my favorite things to use to create this gingival roll. And plus this super sharp tip can get down into here and remove any extra. And this I'm just using kind of like a upward pushing motion and then tapping it into place. Here's my little sponge. I'm gonna pick up just a little bit more. But I've had a few people ask me, well, if I wanted to, could I put the strip on there, and do it like I do the professionals? You can. I just personally found it very difficult because I didn't want the resin on the zirconia teeth. It's very difficult to polish that out. I wanted to keep things nice and clean. I wanted things to be like nice and tight. I didn't want the provisionals is one thing. You can do it kind of quick. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just temporary, but something that's going to be having to go the long haul and, having the resin going across the teeth and trying to get it off, it just created more fuss. This particular way of placing it just let me finesse it a little bit more, and I was actually moving a lot faster um, this way. So we have a really good base started here. I'm going to go ahead and cure this, and then now the shade strip that I used right now is original. I'm going to go back in with the light, which is nearly transparent. And I'm going to place that right over top of the teeth and down into the papilla in small sections. And that's what's gonna give that little bit of a tissue roll look to it, some transparency. It'll make it look very tissue-like. Do you have to do this step? Absolutely not. It just elevates the aesthetics. And I'm gonna do sections at 20 seconds per section curing. The nice thing about EasyGum resin is there are no gels. I mean, I could put this in the little light box at the bench and it'll be completely cured, hard, ready to either polish or I can adjust it if I had to at that point, or I can add a little more to it if I needed to. So the texture of it is hard, cured. There's no gels, there's no extra time, it was just that 20 seconds, and I'm kinda ready to roll with it.
And that's how you know it's cured. You take the Explorer, you poke it. There should be no give. It should be hard, firm. You shouldn't be able to pluck it away from any of the papilla areas. Like if you were gonna test your first case, you would kind of, pick away at it and just make sure all the surfaces are fully sealed.
Yes. So I have my light pink here. I'm gonna do a thinner piece. Looks a little bit like this. I'm placing that right at that transition line. This I'm really gonna concentrate keeping right in this general area. I'm not going to stretch it out too far, but I am going to push it towards and shape the papilla. And as I'm pulling it around, I'm actually pressing it into and down. I think that this is commonly even a area where even ceramics can be, overlooked. Ah, vibrating. I can see that. So this is really going to fill in the papilla area. Be nice and tight.
And so you are placing it there and you are pushing it up a little bit, and it does create that little gingival roll right there.
Yep. So I love the light pink. It's super translucent, looks natural. Um, and I can control it really well in these areas. What I like the most too is that the actual strips don't drift at all. So however I shape it, it's going to stay that way. I'm going to cure this. And then grab some more. like watching golf.
You're slightly off screen.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and cure this. And I have a little bit that went up this way. I'm going to use my sponge. So this is what we have so far. Looks super natural.
That's awesome. And this
Yeah.
is getting close to
Mhm.
final shape.
Yep, this is getting really close. Now from here, this we could just polish this, honestly. Or you can add a little bit more of the pink and color modifiers. I sometimes like to use the um, light reddish pink. It kind of has, believe it or not, it kind of has like an orangey tone to it um, that you can kind of place. This is what it looks like. So I'll take it a little bit on the brush and I'll place it in these areas. And you can either use the brush or you can use the paddle and just kind of like tap it through. It actually kind of brings some like orangey tones through it if that's what you needed. You could come back with the plum or the bright red with your brush and just kind of highlight some areas on the top.
Yeah, so how much characterization on the surface are you
Yeah.
doing it related to other more intense shades to get that
Um,
3D gingival look?
I mean, this is really going to just be based off what your preference is and what you're really going for. Now, if you just wanted straight simple, we could have just stopped right where we were and we just start polishing. And what I'll do is I'll leave this side not characterized and I'll characterize this side just a little bit. I do like to use the um, pink translucent. Um, it's basically clear with just a hint of pink. And that's this one here. And I will line the papilla with my brush. So I'll just tap it and then just
And what
pull that
effect
around.
What effect is this giving you that you like?
I like this because it gives me just a little bit of body and it kind of wraps around and seals that resin around the papilla area. It kind of looks like that translucent, loose gingiva that we see. It's a little bit of a lighter color sitting right above the teeth. A little smoother. Now I will, once I place, I do tack cure these a little more often because I don't want it to slump. You can add just a little bit of the plum right at the tip of the papilla. You can even use some of the opaque shades, or I have the root. Root is kind of like a beige pink. It's a little opaque.
It was made to look like a very light pink, like to show root eminence of the teeth underneath the gingiva.
I like it because it kind of, you can kind of sponge it or kind of tap it into the tissue to kind of give it that, some tissue just has those like little white spots, all the way across, or areas of light and dark. So it does a really good job of doing that. Just used my sponge one more time. So if you do have anything that it stipbles a little too much, just use your brush to kind of buff it out. There you go. Once I get everything cured in the way that I like it, my next steps are going to go straight into polishing. If you have to, and you do see some things that you need to adjust, I would suggest using, you can use that like double crosshatch burr that I was using for like my cutback, or you can use this and it's actually kind of looks like an acrylic burr, but super thin. Either one works really well. So from here, I'm going to leave this side the way that we had it. And this is the side that we did a little extra on. So that's really the basics of it. You can take it as far as you want. Um, you can get a little bit, extra. You can keep it nice and simple. That's going to be definitely up to you. When it comes to polishing, I like to use three tools. My first one is going to be that stiff bristle brush. My next one is going to be my felt wheel, which rolled away from me. And then the last one is going to be, again, that cotton buff that we're going to go back over everything. So,
So when it's gone through its final cure,
yep,
you can just move straight into a polish workflow.
yep. And I'm going to be using the Harvest Speed Polish. And my first one is going to be the bristle brush. I know that's really one of my favorite things is like I don't have to put this any gels. There's no 5-10 minute cycles. It's short, sweet, simple, no gels. It's ready to go right after you're finished. So bristle brush in the speed polish. I'll pick some up. Now
What's
this resin, what's that?
what speed are you picking it up with?
And, it varies. I use a faster speed and I just kind of press into it, but it varies from person to person, depending on like what your control is. I would say experiment with it a little bit. Now, the speed that I'm going to use and the pressure that I'm going to use on the actual resin is a little more significant because it can take it. So I usually start and kind of roll over from the intaglio down towards the papilla with the polish and the brush. So I do apply quite a bit of pressure with my hand. And really, I really like to concentrate on this transition line as well. You will start seeing some of like it'll start to shine a little bit, but what this is really doing is just kind of blending and smoothing. There we go. I'm going to switch over to my felt wheel and I'll be using that with the polish as well. Pick it up. I really like to use this on the intaglio and rolling it over on that finishing edge. This will make it super smooth. They also make these felt wheels like into points also. And very last step I'm going to use is this cotton buff. Sometimes I also will bring in a bristle brush to be able to get down into and around the papilla, but generally it's with the cotton buff with no polish on it whatsoever. So whatever polish is left over on here, we're just going to be buffing that out. And that's where we're going to see that shine really start to pop. You can see where I'm doing the intaglio along with it.
Obviously, a highly polished zirconia surface is well regarded as best for that tissue surface cleansability. It's going to reject plaque and bacteria really nice, not having light cured glaze. Light cured glaze is effective. It's viable. It works. It does have a little more porosity to it and could accumulate plaque and bacteria faster. Not could, usually does accumulate plaque and bacteria faster than a highly polished surface.
I'm just gonna use a little bit of that bristle brush. This is just a super soft goat hair. It's like natural fibers, just like the cotton. There you go. And then from here, I will take it to the steam cleaner and clean off. Let me bring it. So this is what we have.
And from here, would you cotton fluffy it again, or you just say it's just wipe it and
Well, I
good? Like,
didn't. Yeah, no,
go
I
ahead.
didn't steam clean. I just wiped it down. So I do have a little bit here on the side. But no, I mean, if you want to go back over it with a cotton fluffy, you can. I usually just use a microfiber towel and, and wipe everything down, making sure it's nice and clean as I'm going to go back and evaluate and make sure that all of the papilla are nice and tight. Um, if for some reason you said, "Ooh, I really don't like that. I wish I added some here." Absolutely. What I would do at this point is go back to the sandblaster, lightly sandblast, come back. You're just roughening the surface up. Steam clean it, come back to the bench and put a little bit of bond, do that whole process, and then add whatever it is that you want to add to it. Sometimes it happens, you do want to add a little extra to it, but you have the option to do that. So all you would need to do is just repeat that process of prepping, sandblast, steam clean, air dry, bond, cure, and then add a flowable or the strip resin in that spot that you feel like you need a little extra in. I don't glaze anything. I feel like glaze is going to break down. It's going to disappear, and it's going as it breaks down, it becomes very sticky, and everything will stick to it. So you may actually have some issues with down the road having to replace, polish, or replace some of the finish on it. If we're using glazes, I prefer the hand polish technique for
And you're speaking
longevity.
of light cure glazes because we're
Yes.
not ceramic firing this at all,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
Obviously.
If for some reason you said, Shauna, like I have to glaze it, okay, well, there's a process for that. So you're going to do all of your staining and glazing. You're going to have to come back after your fire, and you're going to have to sandblast the tissue. You're going to have to be very precise to get down into the papilla area. And we want to make sure that the glaze isn't going up and over because that will block the bond. So the glaze needs to stay under that gingival margin. And then you're going to have to sandblast that area before you proceed with bonding and placing.
So from here, you'd say we're pretty much done.
Yep. From here, we're pretty much done. Not much else I would do. So I left a little bit of the texture on this side, and we left this side just completely smooth. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So for this demo, you did the front four. It took
Mhm.
about 45, 50 minutes. Obviously, you were going slow and talking. So
We're right
again,
here.
for this full arch, about 2 hours after you get your workflow down, if
Oh,
you were going to
yeah.
do the whole thing.
2 hours or a little less. It doesn't take much time at all. Once you get going with it and get a flow, it can go pretty fast. The nice thing is that you're not having to do multiple fires through this process. But, the really cool thing about this this resin is that when you touch it, it cures and feels like ceramic. So we have quite a few people that pick these up, at shows, and they're like, "No way, I don't believe it." But yes, it looks amazing. Now, the arches that I have here in front of you, there's a detail that was put in over top of so I did a little extra here. So I didn't just polish after I placed the Easy Gum. I actually went back in and did a little bit more shadow contouring with some of the darker colors to make them pop the way it is. But yeah.
Amazing. Thanks for the time. Thanks for your
Yeah.
workflow.
So
And of
that's
course,
pretty much it.
any of you out there can book a demo with Shaana at Harvest. You can go to our homepage. We have some booking links there, and book time with her if you want to connect and learn more about EasyGum, about Nano Zirconia, or about how they can go together, like in this video here.